Welcome to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic dating in Denver. My name is Dave Glazer, your host and facilitator, where each week we bring expert guests to come share their knowledge, tools, and tips so that we can show up as our most authentic self. Hey guys, welcome back to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast. I'm super excited to introduce my expert guest today, Ms. Heather Reinhardt. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. I'm in Denver. It's snowing like a blizzard. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Los Angeles, where we barely ever see snow.
I heard you got snow once this year.
Yeah, it did. You know what? It was more like sleet, but
Okay.
people didn't know, so they called it snow, but it was sleet.
Sure.
But it's super windy today, so we have something going on.
Well, I love the fact that technology, when used in the right way, can connect the world and make it a small place. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
I know a little bit about you, but I want to kind of understand a little bit about why and how you became a self-love aficionado.
It came from me having a moment of, I know that there's more to life than working 9 to 5 for someone else. And there's more to life than, I just had this internal instinct of like, there's more than this. And it didn't happen in one giant swoop. It happened in a lot of tiny little steps where I realized, oh, okay, I need to make better choices for myself if I want better outcomes in all areas of my life, from my personal life to my career to the way I interacted with my family and friends. And I would say I've been on a spiritual journey for about a decade now, and I refer to that as acknowledging that I am a soul living this human experience. But then it got more detailed into a self-love journey about 5, almost 6 years ago. And a breakup did prompt a lot of it. I was in a relationship for 4 years with someone who I loved, but I wasn't in love with, at least towards the end. And I think he would probably say the same about me. And we were able to part amicably, it was like unconscious coupling before Gwyneth and Chris made it a thing. And I was like, oh, I did that. I understand what that is. And from that, I realized that so many people break up really painfully, and it's hard to go through. And I wasn't really going through this pain that other people were going through. And I thought, all right, why am I different? What am I doing differently? And how can I teach other people to break up consciously? Which led me to, oh, this is about self-worth and self-love and self-respect, which dug me deeper into the rabbit hole of how do I change my life? And then in 2014, I put everything I owned in storage. I was on a nomadic adventure because I'd come from living with that boyfriend. We had this beautiful there and move into a 1-bedroom apartment. Like that wasn't going to serve me. So I thought, all right, let's do something completely crazy and different. Everything in storage, 2 bags of luggage and my computer and a few books. And I nomaded around Los Angeles. I lived in other people's houses, drove other people's cars, seemingly living other people's lives while learning to live my best life and really learning what it meant to trust fall into the universe, that I didn't have an apartment or anything really steady. I had a job, so I did have like an actual daily routine, but the idea of essentially taking away my roots and trust falling into the universe that I was always going to be taken care of. And there was never a night that I went without either a sublet or a pet sit or a house sit or even staying with a friend situation. And I call that just like my rebirth. I did that for 9 months. And once I landed back in my own place again, when I was fully ready to say, okay, I can handle being in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself now, post breakup and post living in a beautiful house, I decided that I did want to start writing about my experiences and my journey into self-worth and self-love. And of course, it took a few more years to really understand what that means, just on a personal level, and the transformation that I went through of making better choices for myself. So it's been a lot of different steps in the journey. And you know what? I was talking to a friend last night and we kind of both agreed the journey never ends. You get to one level of whatever you're working towards, you accomplish it, and it's like, oh, now I got to go to this next level. And then you get there and it never ends, which is kind of great in a way, because then there's no rush to the finish line because there is no finish line.
Mm-hmm. in Colorado, we call that a false peak because we have taller mountains here and they're 14,000 feet. So you may actually see like the first peak and you're like, oh, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. And then you get to the top of that. And then you see that little tiny valley right after. And then you see another peak that's taller and grander. And you have to reset your sights on that next peak after you've crossed the false summit.
It's a great metaphor for life. There's always going to be another summit.
And we're truly blessed to be in Colorado where we have the ability to have an active lifestyle like that, and also to reconnect with ourselves when we're in a situation like that.
Yeah. Self-awareness is crucial, right? And that's what my self-love journey taught me, was self-awareness. Self-everything.
100% agree that self-awareness is the key to transforming from a breakup or transforming your life from mediocrity to greatness.
Yeah. My best friend David and I, he was kind of with me on my 9-month journey. He was in the process of a divorce and he didn't have a place to stay for a couple of weeks while he was moving out and transitioning to his next phase. And I said, hey, I've got this amazing house that I'm subletting right now. Why don't you come stay with me? And during that time period, because we're both kind of at a rock bottom place, kind of, sort of. I mean, I wasn't so much like rock bottom per se, but it was at a point where it's like, you either make different choices and see your life expand and grow, or you make the same choices and you end up where you are still. And then of course, him coming off of a divorce, he was more of at a rock bottom than I was, but we made this pact. It was like, let's burn the ships because we can't do mediocre. Mediocre is not allowed. We have to be epic, because when you've seen epic, you can't unsee it. You want to be it. You want to be your best in every single arena. And that's what's so wonderful about a self-awareness, self-love, self-respect, self-worth, all of the mindfulness that we practice, is that it's all on you. And it affects every arena of your life. Like, you can't start working on meditation and not start some kind of better eating and physical workout practice. And it's just all connected. Every single arena of your life has to be in flow.
Thankfully, I started my personal growth journey to self-awareness through fitness and nutrition, weightlifting and jujitsu, and then tuning into that mind-body connection of like, why do I feel a little bit low this week or down this week? Or why am I super stressed? Well, it's because my nutrition isn't dialed in, or I skipped a workout or two.
Yeah.
And what's that?
A week and a half. I have moments where I'm like, why do I not feel good? Oh, I haven't been on my yoga mat in a while. That's why. It becomes so obvious once you understand how everything is connected.
And as I became a personal trainer, it then became my job to teach other people through subtle ways, because when you address like, hey, let's start a fitness routine. I'm the person that I'd like you to come see for that. We can't just go all in with like, hey, this fitness program is actually going to be self-awareness for you.
Right.
Self-discovery. And it's going to start this amazing personal growth journey, because my purpose for starting fitness and nutrition and jujitsu is different from everyone else's.
Sure.
And through self-awareness and discovery, I'm more compassionate with other people to understand that about where they're at.
Totally. I definitely find myself getting less frustrated with people nowadays. It's like, oh, they're just on their journey. They're doing the best they know how to do with the tools that they have.
Because you're not taking anything personally. Is that right?
Yeah. What other people do and say is on them. It's not on me. And sometimes you see people kind of react out of whatever issue they're going on. It kind of gets thrown on you and you're like, hey, that's not actually me. You're having a moment and I accept you're having a moment. Let's move forward. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not taking anything as personal as I used to. It's not about me.
So your breakup wasn't painful, but it was still a learning experience for you. What was your big takeaway other than I need to make a change in my life?
I've always had this deep awareness in me that I was meant for something more than mediocrity and even predictability. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, where majority of my friends that I grew up with got married in their mid-20s, already have a few babies, and I'm pushing 34 this summer and nowhere even near ready to have kids or settle down yet in that regard. I do want them, yes, but I feel like the next few years for me is all about my message and getting my book. And I have another book that I want to do, and I have a TV series that I'm doing, and I have all of these things that I want to do. And coming from where I came from, that's just not possible. Like, you get married and have babies, and by 30, it's just, that's it. But I left Atlanta when I was 22 and moved to Los Angeles, and have just had this inner knowing of like, okay, I'm meant for something more. And I think what the breakup did is it prompted me to move towards that more, even though I didn't know what more meant at that time. I just knew it was more than what I'd experienced. But yeah, my breakup gave me the push through to go, okay, how do I figure out what it is that I know and see about my future? How do I get to that epicness? What does that even mean? And how do I do the daily work to get there?
And your moment of opportunity that you took and grasped was leaving something that was comfortable because you lived together,
Yeah.
and depending on another person.
We had a great friendship. We just realized that, like, oh, this isn't enough. Like, it's not going to sustain us. Some friendships are great for relationships, of course, but we just didn't have what it takes to make it all the way.
So it takes a friendship and something else. Is that what you're trying to say?
And I think that's something else besides the attraction part. That something else is each person's individual self-love.
I got it. So what would you do? What would you tell somebody in the case that one person wants to grow and the other person isn't aware of that potential greatness in themselves?
More than likely, it's going to end up in a breakup. Not all the time, though. But I actually write about this in my book, where if you decide to go on a self-love journey and you really want to just make the best out of your life and you're with a partner, you need to tell the partner, like, hey, this is what I plan on doing. And one of two things will happen. They're either going to say, cool, I'll join you and do my own growth version, or they'll say, all right, you do you. And then cut to a year or two later, it's like you have nothing in common anymore because you've worked on yourself so much and you're probably not taking stuff as personally as you used to. And then they'll be offended by that because you don't fight the same way that you used to. And it's just, it's either you grow together or you grow apart, in my experience. I'm sure there are people out there that have survived it, but is that all that healthy? I don't know.
It's on everyone's individual timeline.
Yes.
So like the person who wants to start their journey first is leading the other person in a general direction. And of course you can't force it on somebody else to love themselves.
No, you can't force people to have self-worth or self-love, self-respect, self-everything. That is a personal choice. And I think it's very different between men and women. I like to refer to self-love in a feminine aspect and self-worth in a masculine aspect. They're the same thing, essentially, just a little differently phrased. But I thought my audience was going to be mostly women because I'm a woman. I'm writing from my own personal female experience. Turns out I have a lot more men interested in what I'm saying than I ever thought I would. And these men are looking for answers on how to increase their self-worth. Who knew?
If I were a man seeking that exact thing, I wouldn't necessarily know how to put my finger on it. I wouldn't know the words to use it because I was raised maybe with other boys around in sports teams or in school, and they didn't know how to say it either. Right. So if I'm a man seeking those answers, I may actually turn to a woman who's a little bit more in touch, in tune, it's sensitive, because the intuition that tells me I need to make a change in my life, I observe it in women maybe more so than I do in men.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful to admit too.
And I think that, give me just 1 second. I wanted to come back to, so the book you wrote is called Go Love Yourself.
Yes.
And if you hold up the cover, I want to show the audience who's watching on YouTube, you actually wrote love over the top of the word fuck.
Technically, there's an asterisk there, so it's friendly.
I don't know how to pronounce that asterisk in the middle of the F word, though, so.
It's a play on go fuck yourself. But yeah, the title is definitely just go love yourself.
Sure.
I wanted to grab people's attention, and the F word does that for sure. And I talk about how there's a dichotomy of two different lives being lived right now from what I'm seeing on this planet. And especially like in our political system where everything is kind of on the divide, right? You're either going this way or this way, and you're either loving yourself or you're fucking yourself is the way I kind of break it down. I wanted to grab people's attention to say, hey, how are you living your life? Are you living it to your fullest and to the way that you want to be living it? Or are you living your life because you've let things happen for you versus letting things happen or making things happen for you? Did you choose your career and did you choose your path, or did you do it because your mom and dad said, hey, you need to be one of these 5 people, a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, one of these things that makes money? Because in my own personal friendship group, I've got all these friends that are really successful, bringing in a lot of money because they chose these careers, but they're miserable. They hate it. And I'm like, wait, you're living the go fuck yourself lifestyle because you didn't make this choice. You made this choice based on someone else's expectations of you. And tell me how that's going, because I don't really see that going well for you when you're overstressed, overworked, and you drink too much and get, well, I guess California and Colorado, you can get high legally. You're getting high too much. You're drinking too much. You're running away on vacations on the weekends. Like, build yourself a life you don't have to run away from. And that was why I wanted the F word to just kind of pop out and be like, what lifestyle are you currently living?
Right. And when you use that in context, I hear you talking about like tripping yourself up, holding yourself back from success, and maybe a little bit of self-sabotage in there, preventing you from living that life that you envision for yourself. Is that right?
Totally. Yeah. Because most people don't understand that everything is a choice. Most people typically fall into the, well, I took this job because I needed the money, or I went on this specific path of education because it's what my parents wanted for me. Very few people can actually say, I did this path because it is what I truly wanted. And I want to teach people, you can take that path, and it doesn't matter what age you are. You can totally change your life around to do exactly what you want and build your life to be exactly how you want it to be.
I've taken some time to really focus on tuning into my own intuition.
Yeah.
Kind of shutting out what other people are telling me I should do, because that word is just awful in my opinion. You should do this.
Yeah. It's like, why? Why should I do that? Because you want me to? Like, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do.
And when I tune into my intuition, I actually feel more empowered because the choice that I make at the end is entirely mine.
Yes.
And I've also taken the time to make a proper decision, as opposed to like an impulse buy at the counter, or an impulsive, I'll accept that job and then figure it out later.
Yeah.
And that comes to me loving myself enough to actually trust my intuition.
Yes. Thank you. That's beautiful. That's exactly what we need more humans talking about, but especially more men.
I don't believe that I would have been able to come to that conclusion, and I'll tie this all in here in a second with something else you said earlier, had I not stayed single for almost 2 years now. And 5.5 for you.
Been on some dates. They haven't gone over well.
Right? And why I say that is because if I'm jumping without enough time to recover and rejuvenate and reset myself in between relationships, then I'm basically numbing myself, like with alcohol, weed, or another relationship. I'm clouding my own intuition by putting my personal growth and my life in somebody else's hands too soon.
And you probably end up repeating the same mistakes from past relationships because we do that until we get clear on who we are. And when you
Without,
love yourself, you can love someone else properly.
without a doubt that the universe or God or whatever spirituality that you tune into will keep testing you with the same tests until until you learn what you're supposed to learn.
Every time. It always cracks me up when someone's like, I don't really believe in that. I'm like, oh, okay, let's look at your life and look at all these tests that have come up that you're not passing. I wonder why you're getting the same thing over and over again. It's crazy. But yeah,
And that and that's why we're here. I believe that, like, after almost a year, 10 months now of hosting the podcast, it's given me purpose, passion, motivation in order to continue to have this important conversation with ourselves and with other people as well.
Yeah, totally. The more we talk about it, the more it becomes known and understood that, hey, this is how you live your best life. You really need to get to know who you are. And then from there, it's smooth sailing because you're making your own choices.
Yes, definitely. The tests are still going to come.
Sure,
And
but you handle them better and you understand them better.
Exactly. I have become so much more resilient and so much more powerful in my own, yes, decision making, but also just in that confidence and my worth and the direction that I've chosen for my life is so direct and so focused right now that I want somebody to come on that journey with me.
Yeah.
But I can't force them, and I cannot be basically held down by an anchor either.
Same. I'm going through an experience right now where the last few dates I've been on, and I'm pretty selective in the first place. Like, I don't really have time to be going out with someone just for coffee. Like, you've got to really hit a couple of checks even before I get to coffee with you. But what's been happening on my end is that I've gone out with about 2 or 3 guys that have had this whole thing of like, oh, you're too much for me. You know what you want and you're creating this brand and you've got this book and these candles and you have real wood furniture in your house and you have frames on the wall. Like, you're an actual woman. Too much. I don't have anything to offer you. I'm like, well, thank you for telling me that first and foremost, but what? What do you mean? Like, how am I too much for you? But apparently that seems to be what's going on right now in my dating world.
I can completely relate. I do come across as very intense as a first impression.
Sure. Same.
And with that self-awareness and discovery piece that I've been talking about on the podcast for the last almost a year, 10 months now, I've been able to basically adjust my perspective on the world.
Yeah.
And with that grace and compassion for other people, now I'm like, okay, they're seeing me in a different way than I'm seeing myself.
Sure.
So it's another teaching opportunity for me to be like, I don't necessarily have to conform in order to get a second date, but
even want a second date with someone who doesn't understand me. Probably not.
Probably not. And what I've been learning, I've been a part of a men's group for about 3 months now. And
I love that. One of my best friends is a part of one, and he comes home from them that's so energized. I'm like, why isn't every man doing this? So I applaud you. Good work.
it took me a long time to actually like humble myself and say, I need help building better relationships with other men. I need help building a relationship with myself, with other men who support me. And what I've discovered is that there's a significant amount of passivity in men in our culture nowadays. And if a passive behavior comes up on that date and they're like, I can't handle you because you're too much, you're too successful, or you're too focused in your direction, then that again is their challenge and their problem.
Yeah.
Internally, and we can send them to a men's group. I've got a couple of recommendations.
We need men's groups all over the nation. Yeah, because I have definitely been out with some men where my ambition, drive, and success, and the amount of money that I make is terrifying to them. I'm like, wait, I don't understand. I thought that men would be proud of me and want to be by my side and be successful with me. No, turns out they're terrified. Like, okay,
So you say that you're very, very selective.
I am.
And if we're still finding basically the same type of a man over and over again, I would talk to one of my clients or my friends or family who reach out. Hey, Dave, what are you doing? Why are you hosting this podcast? And by the way, can you help me out a little bit? I'm happy to do it. And I would actually take a step back even further. And it sounds like the selection process is working, but where are we meeting these people where it's like the same pool of people to choose from?
Right. Mine have all been matchmaking through friends of like, oh, you should meet this guy. You should meet this guy. And I actually made the choice about a month and a half ago with the launch of everything coming up that I was just going to take a dating break because I don't have the capacity within me to hold space for that right now with the launch of everything. But, I have faith and hope and trust that the right man will come in at the right time while simultaneously building my own business.
Congratulations. Having that self-awareness for, I need to take a break right now so that I can do X, Y, and Z in my life.
Yeah. And
So
I got a lot of those guys that were very much intimidated by me in the pre-launch phase of I'm going to be doing this. I have this book that's going to come out. I'm launching this candle line. I didn't have physical product just yet. And I think that when I, cut to 6 to 9 months from now, when the book is out, the candles are launched and everything is in flow, I think I'll be in a different energy set where a man isn't going to be intimidated by what I am creating, but rather impressed by you have done this, the right man.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly correct. You're tuning into your intuition and you're saying that instead of forcing the issue with the wrong guy right now, I'm going to be patient, take time off, and actually be patient enough to know that when the timing is right, that right person is going to come into my life.
100%. I'd rather be home on Friday nights plowing away at my to-do list to make my company successful over the next year than be out with the wrong guy, upset that he doesn't see my worth.
Mm-hmm.
Or is intimidated by it. He sees it. He's just intimidated by it.
Right. I love this expression that I've learned along the way. If I'm willing to give up what I want most right now so that I can have it every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to be willing to do that.
Totally. Yeah. That's an entrepreneur right there.
You're absolutely right. And in the context, it is about time freedom for me.
Yeah.
I would like the time freedom so that I can ski on a powder day. It's almost blizzard conditions today, but it's April in Colorado. That's to be expected. I would like to be able to take a powder day. I would like to be able to support my family and actually take them with me. That's the motivator.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same for me too. Even though I'm a woman, I hope I'm able to do that for my family. I hope I'm able to buy my future husband a Ferrari or whatever car he wants because I have that. I call it Mars energy, like the whole women and Venus and Mars thing. Like I have some Mars energy in me. I've got some masculine drive when it comes to business. So I'm with you on that. Like I want to support my family and friends and loved ones because if I'm going to build an empire, I don't want to share it, or I don't want to be alone. I want to share it.
Mm-hmm. And recognizing that situational masculinity comes out with you in your drive and in your mission and your purpose and your passion. It's going to take a very, very strong, independent, self-awareness minded man to come into your life.
Totally. Yeah.
And be your ride or die.
I'm looking for someone more dominant than me. And I'm pretty dominant. So yeah, he's going to have to be very self-aware and very, very into his self-worth and knows who he is. He's out there. He'll find me.
Uh-huh. If I happen to come across him, I'll send him your way. Now tell me, there's a story behind why you chose candles and jewelry.
I did. Yeah. So I was always told, because writing is my first lover. Like it is my mission. It's when I feel the highest of purpose. But I was always told, if you're going to be a writer, you've got to have some other line of income coming in, because you don't really make a lot off books. You might make an advance, but you can only live off of that for a year or so. So look into other ideas to support yourself that kind of go with your brand. And of course, the ideas that were thrown at me were, oh, you could do online seminars, you could do online coaching. And I was like, that's not really my thing. I still want to write more than I want to be one-on-one and coach people. It's not that I'm not open to it. It just really wasn't calling towards me. And I thought, all right, well, what about a product line? What would I put together as a product line? So I reread my draft of my book, and I was like, oh, I talk about how I used candles in my early spirituality phase in my early 20s about, at the time, it was mostly about creating financial success. I would light a candle. I would get one of those green candles from the drugstore, the grocery store. They're kind of like the Catholic altar candles, the tall ones in the glasses. Sometimes they have like Mother Mary on them. I would get a green one, and I would light it every time I got home at night I would be out for the day at my job or whatever. And every time I'd light it, I would say an affirmation. I would say, I am abundant. I am financially self-sufficient. I am making money to support myself. And then I'd burn the candles sometimes, throughout the night. I'd wake up and it'd still be on the next morning, which is not exactly good, but I would do that in my early years because I was not smart. But anyways, so I talk about that in my book, and it dawned on me, oh, I can make an affirmation candle line because this is something that I do and I love. And I started Googling around, like, all right, what other affirmation candles are out there? And all of them were kind of like those tall Jesus ones, except they were related to the chakras and had crystals in them, and they were just kind of bougie, or they were like hippy dippy, right? I'm totally down for that. I've definitely done that path before. But I knew my audience was more broad. It wasn't as niche as just a spiritually based audience. I had a whole wide audience. And I thought, all right, I need to make them a little bit more mainstream. So I thought, all right, how can I make a candle that's geared towards a spiritual moment you're having with yourself? How can I make that bougie? And I thought, oh, okay, so I'm just going to take candles and write the prompt of an affirmation on them. And then as you light the candle, you finish the prompt yourself. And yeah, I went to a candle maker, figure out how to make candles. Actually, the company that I used, they hire adults with disabilities to do the hand pouring and labeling. So that was really important that I had that extra cause added in there. So all of my candles are hand poured by adults with disabilities. So you're not only empowering yourself when you buy one, you're empowering someone and giving someone a job, essentially. So yeah, it's been a really fulfilling journey that was kind of unexpected. I decided last minute, let's do this. And who knew it was going to make me really fulfilled.
And do each of your affirmation candles come with like supporting materials to help get somebody jump started on this process?
There is, on the website, there's a bunch of information on it, and in the book as well. And the actual candle itself comes with an affirmation card. So you write down whatever affirmation you're working on. You can either place it by the candle and say it aloud every time you write it. You can put it in your wallet. You can put it on your vision board. I have mine taped to my mirror on my makeup vanity. So I'm like looking at it every time I'm doing my face. Many different opportunities. Yeah.
That's awesome. Before we sign off for the day, if somebody loves your message and it resonates with them, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Heather-Reinhardt.com. And then I also have affirmationcandles.com. And then here's one of my candles right here. This is the I Am. And I'm on Instagram as well. I'm really pretty active on Instagram at Heather Reinhardt, and also at Affirmation Candle. Yeah. And I'm pretty good about responding to DMs too. So if anybody has any questions, hit me up.
I love that. If a strong, independent, masculine man wants to just slide up into your DMs, I'll send him your way.
Love yourself and love your life that you've created.
I have one more specific question, And then a follow-up general question for you before we take off. I know your time is very valuable, so thank you very much so far.
Of course.
If somebody is in a relationship and they're finding some challenges and they come across a useful tool called the love languages,
Mm-hmm.
and each person is willing to take the test and they start to communicate about it, how does one adapt to the other person's top love language when they're maybe miscommunicating or just not on the same page?
That goes back to deep self-awareness, I think, where you have to check yourself, like, oh, okay, we're not communicating well right now because I'm not following their love language or vice versa. Yeah, self-awareness. And the conscious choice of, I'm going to try to make this work. I'm going to actively try to shift things so it's a better conversation, a better free-flowing connection.
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness is the answer to everything, isn't it?
I'm finding that out after 2 to 3 years of understanding my Enneagram type, which I'm known as the challenger. I see a lot of myself in you. I come across very intense and intimidating to other people.
So, right? Like I'm still chill. Maybe
because we're self-aware, we no longer show up as that Mack truck.
Yeah, that's true.
But of course, I'm not putting you in that box. You would have to determine your type yourself.
I've done that quiz. I don't recall what I am right off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and look through it in my emails. But.
Sure. I'll resend it to you. 9types.com is free. Take the ready test, and it takes about 10 minutes.
Perfect. I'm down.
But before we jump off, if there's one thing you want to leave us with that either we touched on briefly and you'd like to dive deeper into, or we hadn't gotten to it yet, what's that one thing you'd like to send us off with today?
That you are worth the time and energy to figure out. Don't let anybody tell you, or don't let anybody's fear tell you that you don't deserve what you desire. It's going to take time and work on yourself to get what you want, but you can totally get what you want, and you can live the life of your dreams if you constantly work towards it and don't give up on yourself. Don't let fear drive. Fear's got to get out of the car.
And that's the go fuck yourself that you wanted to cover up and readdress with go love yourself.
Yeah. Fear is the fuck yourself. Love is the love yourself.
And if somebody's kind of apprehensive and a little bit unsure of like starting that, because it's challenging, it's hard.
Yeah, and it's out of society's norm because nobody really teaches us as kids, like, oh, you need to have self-worth and self-love and self-respect. Like, that's just not a conversation that's had unless you come from a very self-aware parent, which most of us don't. Some of us are lucky enough that we did, but majority of us not so much. But yeah, it's a hard journey. How do you start that journey? By admitting to yourself you need it, getting vulnerable to yourself. Find a friend who you can be vulnerable with and trust. And I really pride myself in my friendships. I'm so lucky to have, I mean, a lot of people say the whole like quality over quantity. I really have a quantity of quality friends. And that's because I've actively worked on friendships I've devoted time to really knowing people and vice versa, and spending time with them and making sure that I give gifts to them that suit what their life is about. And it's also interesting how so many of them are like, I'm like, oh, you don't love yourself yet. It's okay. I'm gonna keep showering you with love until you figure out how to love yourself. But I think finding a friend who you can get vulnerable with, who's not gonna betray you, or say anything hurtful, that somebody who can just listen to everything you're going through and hopefully be your support and your rock and your guide. That's how you start. You don't have to do it alone. I'm so lucky that I had 2 really close friends from the get-go 5 years ago forward. I still talk to both of them daily, and I've collected even more since then. But yeah, having the vulnerability to admit to yourself, like, hey, my life's not really exactly what I want it to be. That's step 1. Step 2 is talk about it with someone that you really trust, or a therapist. Therapy is great too. therapy is a great step. You get to talk about stuff that you don't want to talk about, but your therapist will call you out on it anyways. So pay for a friend, essentially, if you don't have someone in your life that you trust wholeheartedly to get vulnerable with.
A friend who's educated and who has useful tools in their toolbox that they can teach to us how to become more resilient, self-aware, so that we can live the best life possible.
Hands down. Yeah. Or a friend who can just tell you, thanks for sharing all of this. Here I am. I'm here if you need, like, someone to hold space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
earlier we were talking about the friends setting you up on dates. I wanted to come back and finish up our conversation with that.
Yeah.
But I was recently set up on a date by a matchmaker who does this professionally. And the woman I was set up with was a client of hers, and I'm not a client of the matchmaker, and reached out over text and said, hey, Dave, I've got a wonderful woman that I want to meet you. I want to introduce you to. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm single, and I'm interested in finding that person who's going to compliment me best and come enrich my life as opposed to complete it. And the matchmaker and I don't know each other very well. And so therefore, like, I arrive on the date and I instantly knew that it wasn't the right match. Mm-hmm. And when your friends are setting you up and they may know you very, very well.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't know that person that they're setting you up with as well as they know you.
Right. It's like a friend of a friend kind of thing. And, I have a friend. And yeah, it's that. Yeah. And also, I think that my friends mean well, but I think there's some, like, Heather needs to be dating. She's almost 34 and blah, 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 blah. There's some fear there. I personally don't have the fear. I let the fear go a long time ago, because I can see myself as a mom and a wife one day. Like, I don't have the fear of, like, oh my God, what if that doesn't happen? Like, it's going to happen for me. But I think some of my friends just have that, like, you've been single for 5.5 years. We have to get you out on a date. I've got this guy who knows this guy. And it ends up becoming not really a very personalized matchmaking experience, more so of a fear-based, you should go out with this guy. All right.
When you set yourself some healthy boundaries around, like, right now is not the right time, it's so much easier to say no, not out of fear, but out of self-love.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, no, this doesn't serve me. I have boxes of candles and books all over my house right now. There's literally no room for a boyfriend. Like, where would he sit? On
top of the boxes.
You can sit there. Yeah, I think that our society has put too much of a stress on finding someone
at a certain age.
Yeah, by a certain age, because, women's biological clocks are ticking.
Or by a certain income level.
Yeah. For women, it's the age because of the biological clock. And with men, it's like, nope, need to be making X amount before I can support somebody. Well, I got news for you. Women work nowadays, so you don't really have to support anybody. It's called teamwork and partnership. Mm-hmm. But society's rules, which are not actually real rules, still seem to run the place. And I hope that more people, as they awaken to their self-awareness and self-love, that they're able to say, oh, fuck society. I'm going to do what I want to do and let the universe play its part too. Because I really do believe that the universe brings you the right people at the right time.
I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I like to enrich my life when I'm alone with knowledge.
Yeah, same.
And there were two men talking about this, men versus women in the workplace kind of a thing. And they came at us with a very, very good statistic that women are more successful than men at every level of education that they receive. Mm. Women are more successful when they go to college than men. Women are more successful in high school than men. So for a man to say, when I make this much money, I will settle down and I will do X, Y, and Z, because then I will have arrived. And you say, appropriately so, that women are supporting themselves because they have tried so hard at every single level for themselves, not for anybody else.
Yeah.
They didn't go to college to to gain acceptance from a man so that they could get married.
No, we all went to college because we wanted to do something with our lives.
And
Yeah.
you put an appropriate value on that education.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of women in my position, where I started my own company with no financial help from anybody except myself, um, and no investors, no other partners. Granted, I have a best friend who's a CPA and a really good friend who's an attorney. So I turn to them often of like, hey, how do I do this? But I've built everything on my own. And I think that a lot of women are capable of that, and they haven't been highlighted as that for so long. And now it's starting to finally come around as, oh, you're a woman founder of a company. We need to get you, in Forbes. It's like, why now? Why is it now just becoming a thing? I mean, I grew up in a household where both my parents worked, and my dad owned his own company. Some years were great for him. Other years, my mom's income was higher, just depending on what was going on. And so I grew up seeing a partnership of two parents bringing it both to the table. But I find it fascinating being a woman founder right now, where we are, of like, oh, this is so great, you're doing this. I'm like, did I really have any other choice? It's what I wanted to do. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch it unfold even more throughout the next decade.
Yeah, let's remove the male founder, woman founder, and basically just call ourselves founders.
Yes. Like, what's the big deal? Why is there so much sexism involved in it? And I get it. Men still make more than a woman does by, I think it's 79 cents to a dollar, something like that. I've never personally worked in corporate world, so I don't have that experience, but I acknowledge that it's there. But I've never had that whole like, oh, a man gets a job instead of me. It's a weird world, but yeah, let's all be equals and acknowledge each other as humans. Happy to be a woman founder though, but if I were a man, I'd still be doing the same thing.
Well, thank you so very much. I think we'll end on that high note.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure so far. And what do you say in the next 6 to 12 months? We come together, we collaborate either on like a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live.
Let's do it. I'll be there.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so very much, Heather.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.